Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. Albert Einstein. Karma is the cosmic law, or rather a cosmic law, in Santan or Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism primarily, that is based on the law of cause and effect. The word karma comes from the Sanskrit root karman, which means action. So this is why the term karma can suitably be translated as action and consequence. So understanding this, karma doesn't indicate what is right or wrong. It's not a law of morality. The Buddha taught the 3 marks of existence, which are the 3 fundamental eternal laws of the universe. These are karma, which is the law that perpetuates samsara, the never-ending mechanical cycle of existence and rebirth and death. And there's the aspect of nirvana, which is cessation of karma and cessation of samsara. So the end of all of that, the end of existence. And then there's space or emptiness, sunyata. Karma is simply the law in nature that manages energy. Therefore, it can also be referred to as the law of exchange. Everything that exists in the universe requires energy to sustain itself. This is why the great inventor and physicist Nikola Tesla said, if you wish to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So that is, of course, the reason why we're able to live and sustain ourselves, because we regularly take in the energy we need to survive, primarily from food and water. But even the most effortless, small, or subtle functions we carry out on a daily basis, like thinking, imagining, and feeling emotions, expend energy. So for this reason, every thought and action, regardless of how insignificant it may seem, is an exchange of energy. And all energy exchanges produce consequences. There's no exception to this. In fact, because of something called quantum entanglement theory, we now have a way of understanding and explaining how thoughts and actions are recorded in the universe and how they can be found and traced back to their origin within the quantum field matrix, back to the Big Bang and beyond. In Hinduism, this field matrix, or cosmic library, if you will, is known as the Akash. Many people call it the Akashic records. Everything that exists leaves an energetic imprint whose chain of causality or dependent origination can be browsed and traced. Quantum field theory, among others, can scientifically demonstrate to us the existence of the Hindu Akash. Now, wrong action produces unwanted karma, which results in all the negative consequences and inconveniences we receive in life. In the context of karma as well, the word dharma is sometimes used to refer to good karma. This is experienced as all the beneficial results and synchronicities we receive when we perform good deeds. Now, there are 4 primary types of karma. The first kind is primordial karma. This is the cause and the narrative responsible for bringing us into existence and into a cycle of evolution through the different kingdoms of nature. The next kind of karma is fate karma, or past life karma. This is a little bit narrower. This is the kind of karma that's based on the actions carried through and the quality of mind developed over the course of all the previous lives within the current round of evolution, including our present life. Therefore, this karma determines the conditions for the next life. A soul with fate karma can live a sedentary life and not produce any significant daily karma, and yet carry great debts from previous lives that must inevitably be paid. Daily karma is the karma that we create from our day-to-day actions. This is another kind. This is the third kind. The consequences of these actions arise within the short term and are paid within days or weeks or months because of the insubstantial nature of the actions that cause them. some of the actions that cause daily karma may still originate from the deeper roots of the ego, actions out of anger or desire and so forth, but smaller portions are indebted within the short term to make repayment easier. So thus, this karma is paid quite quickly. And lastly, there is the law of accidents. This is the possibility that significant events and accidents can occur on occasion without substantial causality, merely because of the diverse interplay and interactions of beings in a busy environment. When you live in a big city, for example, a lot of problems can happen at any moment. You could be walking down the street and struck by a car or a bus. You could get lost if you're unfamiliar with the area. You could lose your transit ticket. You could bump into a person. That's a very high probability. Or a cyclist. Or find yourself stuck in rush hour and late for work. So many accidents and inconveniences occur in the universe that don't have a particularly strong causation. They're simply happening because of carelessness and high probabilities of events. And so now karma has a mechanical aspect which can be found in physics, but we should never limit our understanding of it to a rigid material law, because in addition to this, karma is also managed by cosmic citizens. Therefore, karma is a conscious law that is flexible and negotiable, with the exception of actions related to sex being non-negotiable. Karma caused by sex can be paid in different ways, but it can't be avoided entirely. Now, since karma is a conscious law, superior laws always override inferior laws. I was in a dream at one time, and at one point I began to receive an insight from my intuition, my Tathagata, and she narrated to me that evil always has the last say. And as I began to see, she said this as I began to see these dark entities materialize near me so that they could carry out a negotiation with the superior beings that were already there in that place I was dreaming in. So they were working together, these higher and lower forms of intelligence. When I woke up from that vision, I thought about why it's the case that evil has the last say in karmic judgments. And in this context, I knew that the meaning was not the last say as in the most important or superior say, but rather the opposite, the final and least prioritized say, at least important or influential. And if you think about it, any creature that has ego carries their own subjective, unreliable, and false way of perceiving the world. So it makes perfect sense that souls with ego, or souls who are devoid of a conscience, it makes sense that they should never take priority over judging karmic actions, because karma is a perfect and conscious law, and beings with ego are not perfect. So they always carry some level of delusion. Now, actions of any kind can't be taken back or ignored, but superior actions can pay for outstanding karma so that the consequences become reduced or even erased. The lords of karma take into consideration many things when it comes to judging souls. According to the law, a person can sometimes be rewarded for simply putting effort into a task or a deed, but however, their results are multiplied when their deed makes a continually outward impact on the lives of other beings. So, for example, if you write a self-help book, but it never gets published, your book will have very little karmic impact. Intention and level of cognizance are also qualities that the lords of karma take into consideration when judging. Many of us have heard the line in the Bible where Jesus says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." This is something that happens during karmic judgments. The severity of karma from a thought or action can vary depending on whether the person had bad intentions or good intentions. For example, the severity is lessened when an individual does something out of habit and with little to no awareness. Just doing things automatically, not paying attention, or doing something that they didn't know about, something that they thought was okay but is actually harmful. So are the actions being performed in a state of psychological sleep, or are they being performed in ignorance where the person doesn't really know what they're doing? Even though they're aware, they don't know the meaning of it, they don't realize it's harmful. Or is it executed deliberately and with cognizance, as in the case of a bank robber who needs to stay sharp and alert and fully aware of what's going on? Now, another factor that makes a difference is the level or dimension in which we perform an action. We live here in the physical world and body, which is our primary domain for now, and most of us are completely accustomed to physicality. So for us, generally speaking, actions that are taken in the physical world have the most effect and consequence than those taken in more subtle dimensions like the astral plane, which is where we engage every time we use our imagination or feel strong emotions or dream at night or whenever we sleep. Now, regarding the negotiability of karma and its relationship with fate or destiny, this is what the Venerable Master Samael had once explained. He says, "Karma is the law of compensation, not of vengeance. There are some who confuse this law with detriment and even fatalism, believing that everything that happens to the human being in life is inexorably determined before." But he says, it is true that the acts of the human being are determined by inheritance and education and the environment and so on. But it is also true that the human being has free will and can modify his or her actions to educate their character, to form superior habits, to fight against weaknesses, to fortify virtues, and so on. Now, invariance is another characteristic of karma that expresses itself in Newton's third law of physics, action and reaction. Newton's third law states that for every action or force in nature, there is an equal but opposite reaction. So if object A exerts a force on object B also exerts an equal but opposite force on object A. The most simple examples of invariance include dropping a ball onto the ground and watching it bounce up and down until it reaches a state of equilibrium. Another simple example is the recoil of a rifle, or some kind of gun, like a pistol or something. We also witness invariance when we drop a pebble into a body of water and create waves that move up and down. So in these cases, like the ball or the waves, there's energy that's being dissipated and it's exhausting itself, but it has to alternate from one side to the other in terms of polarity. The ball is dropped and then it bounces up and it goes down, same with the wave. But a more elaborate and interesting phenomenon of cause and effect is the law that demonstrates that the consequence of an action is always greater than the initial action. Another example is just one push of a domino from the beginning of its line. That one domino will make the entire lineup fall down. That's a domino effect, right? Or let us take the pebble in the water example again. When we throw a rock or pebble into a still body of water, we see the initial plunge of the rock into the water, and we see the backfire. We see the water dip down where the pebble landed, and then we see the water jump up again. And it continues to splash and create waves, and these waves propagate outward. And the cycle of invariance between the waves continues to repeat until the energy of the water subsides. But furthermore, the waves can also create smaller ripples that span across the entire lake or pond, theoretically. And in spite of those ripples being weaker than the individual waves, they can still affect, or at least be felt, in a very broad area within which the surrounding animals can sense. Just like the design of genes amongst the creatures of the earth, so too are rebirth and recurrence the results of karma. When we die, the body is left behind and our soul goes through the process of death and rebirth. The circumstances of our next life are determined by the karma we accrued in this life, as well as our previous lives. The necessity to return is due to unsettled karma that remains in motion with the causes and conditions of the ego. And this is our subconsciousness still at play. This is the part of our mind that belongs to the wheel of samsara. If we remember that for every action taken, there follows an equal but opposite reaction given back, then the same rule applies to rebirth. This is why typically when we are reborn, the roles and circumstances between ourselves and our soulmates invert. So typical relationship dynamics like boyfriend and girlfriend, or parent and child, or uncle and nephew, take turns alternating in each successive life. The roles are not always exactly the same as in previous lives, but they bear resemblance and have the appropriate conditions. So sometimes people think that, oh, I must have been, your mother in the previous life because I have to take care of you all the time. Well, actually, it would be the opposite. Most of the time, it's the opposite. They may have been that kind of maternal figure for you. And vice versa. In Newton's second law of thermodynamics, the universal experience of heat and energy interconversions, heat always moves from the warm objects and toward colder objects. So in order to reverse the direction of heat flow, more energy must be exerted. This is similar to the law of entropy. Entropy is nature's tendency to behave disorderly and randomly in various systems and natural elements. This phenomenon is commonly explained by comparing states of matter like solids and liquids and gases. In the case of states of matter, the formation of water molecules into ice, for example, this requires more energy output and order than the formation of liquid or gas. So a very simple way of putting it is that it's easier for any object or creature to relax and roll downhill whilst gravity pulls it, and to pursue their desires and do whatever they feel like. Then it's easier to do this than it is to exert energy and run up the hill and do things that you don't always want to do, like exercise or take care of your health or eat healthy food or study and read things. Sometimes you don't feel like doing these things, but they're beneficial. So this is, how does this relate to us? The reason this is important for us is because evolution works in the same way. Evolution accords with the law of entropy. Every system, from the microcosm to the macrocosm, requires effort and energy and resources to sustain itself. Otherwise, it will decay over time, eventually. Plants, animals, people, and civilizations, ecosystems, forests, all require energy and effort and order and maintenance in order to survive and prosper. They don't necessarily support themselves. I mean, they do, because evolution is a curve. So when things are evolving, they might for a while evolve automatically and naturally. But after the point of development, things have to turn around and decay, and they don't last forever. They can last longer, however, when effort is being exerted. You can make your body last longer when you train it and live the proper lifestyle. But it doesn't happen when you just do whatever you want, right? Same thing with everything else. So the way we use energy on a regular basis determines the quality of our mind and our life in the future. Are we just exhausting the energy we have every day on useless activities? Or are we living more efficiently, conserving as much energy as we can, and taking advantage of every hour and moment that we have to make this world a better place, to make ourselves a better person, and therefore making this world a better place. This is the key to evolution and sustainable living. And individually, it is the key to enlightenment.